You were never meant to live on autopilot. But from the moment you woke up today, something glitched. The question is, at what level of consciousness are you stuck? Because the human mind doesn't just think, it levels up. And between level 1 and level 100, there are strange loops, illusions, and bugs in the code. But before we dive deeper, tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it there, right now? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know who's joining us on this journey around the world. What if I told you most people never go past level 20 in their entire lives, that they keep reliving the same emotional cycles, the same patterns, thinking it's free will, when it's just another glitch? Let's explore the entire map, from level 1 to 100, and see where your mind truly stands. Level 1. Survival instinct. This is the root layer, the primal code. Here, consciousness isn't reflective, it's reactive. You move based on hunger, fear, pain, and pleasure. You're not thinking about tomorrow, purpose, or morality. You're thinking, will I eat today? Will I be safe? Emotions are raw. Rage isn't complex, it's a tool. Anxiety? Just heightened alertness. Compassion doesn't exist here. It's not needed. You survive by instinct, not connection. Every decision is driven by biology, not belief. You're an animal in human skin, ruled by impulses you don't even question. Most people touch this level during panic, addiction, or extreme stress. It's not evil. It's ancient. And until it's recognized, it runs the show from the shadows. Level 2, tribal obedience. At this level, the mind begins to seek safety, not through instinct, but through belonging. You follow the tribe, family, religion, culture, community, because questioning them feels dangerous. You adopt beliefs, rituals, behaviors, even enemies, without ever asking why. Conformity is survival. Dissent feels like death. Your choices are shaped by groupthink, not individuality. You wear the team colors, speak the approved language, and nod along to ideas that might secretly feel wrong, just to avoid exile. The glitch here? You mistake inherited identity for truth. Most live their entire lives here, mistaking obedience for loyalty and fear for faith. But deep inside, a silent voice begins to whisper, what if they're wrong? What if I am more? Level 3, mimicry. At this stage, consciousness copies more than it creates. You watch, you imitate. Role models become templates. Parents, celebrities, influencers, peers. You shape your voice, your style, your opinions based on what earns approval. Not because you're fake, but because imitation feels like a shortcut to acceptance. The glitch here? You forget where they end, and you begin. You speak in borrowed phrases, wear borrowed values, perform emotions because they seem correct. Authenticity isn't rejected. It's simply never been introduced. The fear of rejection overrides curiosity, and so you become a collage of others, a mirror without memory. You survive not by knowing who you are, but by becoming what the world rewards. But the real you, still watching. Level 4, fear response. Here, fear becomes the operating system, not just in moments of danger, but constantly. You brace for impact before life even swings. Every interaction is scanned for threat, rejection, humiliation, abandonment. Anxiety becomes familiar. The body tenses by default. You read too deeply into texts. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened. You catastrophize the future to feel in control. The glitch? Fear disguises itself as logic. You say you're just being realistic, but deep down you're frozen. Growth feels risky. Vulnerability feels deadly. Even love becomes suspicious. Too good to be true. You don't trust peace because it's foreign, so you cling to the chaos you know. And every time calm knocks, fear answers the door first. Level 5, pleasure chasing. Now the fear turns into craving. You chase highs, not just drugs or sex, but dopamine, scrolling, shopping, attention, applause. If it feels good, it must be right. Pain is the enemy. Discomfort is rejected instantly. You live for the next hit of pleasure, avoiding anything that slows you down or makes you feel. The glitch? Pleasure becomes a distraction from presence. You're not enjoying, you're escaping. You laugh without joy, smile without peace, and collect moments you can't remember. Silence becomes unbearable because there's no stimulation. This level isn't about indulgence, it's about numbing. You convince yourself you're living your best life, but really, you're running. From yourself, from stillness, from the void between the highs. Level 6, material worship. At this level, worth is measured in weight. The car you drive, the clothes you wear, the square footage of your house, these become the scoreboard. You crave objects not for their use, but for the status they signal. You buy to impress, not to enjoy. Luxury becomes identity. And the glitch? You confuse accumulation with achievement. A full closet masks an empty self. Success becomes external. Numbers in a bank account, followers on a screen. But no matter how much you gain, the void inside doesn't shrink. In fact, it grows. You start chasing more, faster, louder, hoping to silence the whisper that asks, would they still respect you if everything you owned disappeared tomorrow? Level 7, validation addiction. Now, the currency shifts from stuff to approval. Every move is curated for applause. You post, pose, perform, all for likes, compliments, and nods of acceptance. Your sense of self is outsourced. You feel alive only when seen, worthy only when praised. Criticism cuts deep even if it's true. Silence feels like rejection. The glitch? You become a character in your own life, editing your personality to match the audience. Authentic thoughts get filtered. You fear being misunderstood more than being invisible. And yet you can't stop seeking the high, because the moment you're not being validated, you feel like you're vanishing. So you ask, post, smile, again. But deep down, you wonder, who am I when no one's watching? Level 8, identity formation. Here, consciousness clings to definition. You begin stitching together a story of who you are. I am this name, this gender, this job, this nationality, these traumas, these wins. You build a personality like a fortress, not realizing it's also a prison. Labels feel like safety. Roles feel like truth. But the glitch? You start defending the costume like it's your soul. Any challenge to your identity feels like an attack. You stop growing because growth requires shedding, and you've confused change with death. At this level, being yourself means clinging tightly to a version of you that may no longer exist. You've built a castle of mirrors, beautiful, convincing, but fragile. And behind it, something ancient waits to breathe. Level 9, belief armor. Now the mind wraps itself in ideas like chainmail. Beliefs become shields about the world, about people, about yourself. This is how things are. This is who I am. You hold on to these thoughts, not because they're true, but because they make you feel safe. The glitch? You stop questioning. You defend your beliefs as if losing one means losing yourself. Dissonance feels like danger. You dismiss anything that threatens your worldview, even if it's liberating. Beliefs stop being tools and become cages. You'd rather be certain than free. And the longer you wear this armor, the heavier it gets. Until one day, a crack appears. A whisper. What if everything I believe is just a story I inherited? Level 10, controlled freedom. This is the illusion of choice. You think you're free? After all, you pick your clothes, your career, your weekend plans. But underneath, Your decisions are deeply shaped by invisible scripts, societal norms, cultural pressure, unhealed wounds. You follow the path that was pre-approved. Your dreams are mass-produced. You rebel within acceptable limits. The glitch? You confuse permission with liberation. You feel free because you picked the prison color, but deep down, you sense it. A subtle, hollow ache, like you're living someone else's idea of success. You check all the boxes but still feel restless. And when you ask, "Is this all there is?" the system replies, "Be grateful. Don't question. Keep going." And most people do. Level 11, Echo Chamber. At this level, you don't seek truth, you seek agreement. You surround yourself with people who think, speak, and believe exactly like you. Not because you're arrogant, but because it feels safe. Challenging views trigger discomfort, so you scroll past them, mute them, unfriend them. Your reality becomes a loop of confirmation. The glitch? You start mistaking repetition for truth. You become insulated, not informed. Debate feels like attack. Curiosity gets replaced with certainty. Your growth plateaus because new input never enters. And without friction, there's no evolution. The chamber may be cozy, but it's also soundproof. No new signals can get in. The hardest part? You don't realize you're trapped because everyone around you sounds just like you. Level 12, Thought Loop. Here, thinking becomes a cage disguised as a tool. Your mind spins, replaying old conversations, predicting disasters, overanalyzing every word and glance. You solve problems that don't exist yet, then create problems just to solve them. The glitch? You confuse thinking with control. You believe if you just think enough, you'll feel safe. But safety never comes. Instead, your thoughts cannibalize each other. You become exhausted by your own mind. Sleep is light. Peace is rare. Stillness feels impossible. You're living in a constant future or past, anywhere but now. And worst of all, the overthinking often feels productive, like you're being careful. But the truth is, you're stuck in a maze where the exit is silence, and that scares you. Level 13, Emotional Replay. This is the level where feelings become loops, not because they're new, but because they're unprocessed. You keep attracting the same relationships, same fights, same wounds, wrapped in different packaging. Your triggers have names, but the pain beneath them has been echoing for years. The glitch? You think it's the situation, but it's the pattern. Your nervous system is addicted to familiar chaos, even if it hurts. You mistake emotional intensity for connection. Drama becomes comfort food. Peace feels boring. You say, "Why does this always happen to me?" But deep down, you already know. Until the original wound is felt and seen without judgment, life will keep handing you mirrors, hoping one day you finally stop breaking them. Level 14, Passive Blame. Here, responsibility is always out there. Your boss is toxic. Your ex ruined your trust. The world is unfair. Life becomes something that happens to you, not something you shape. You become a narrator of misfortune, building an identity around what others did. The glitch? Blame feels like power, but it's actually paralysis. As long as someone else is the villain, you never have to change. You can stay stuck and justified. Growth feels optional. Reflection feels unnecessary. You say, "I'm just unlucky," but luck is often disguised as accountability. The moment you turn the mirror inward, the story starts to shift. But many don't. They'd rather stay right than free. Because victimhood may be painful, but it's familiar. Level 15, Scarcity Mindset. At this level, life always feels like it's slipping through your fingers. There's never enough. Not enough time, money, love, or attention. Even when you have something good, you brace for the loss. You hoard, you overthink, you compare. The glitch? You believe that gain for others means loss for you. Success feels limited, so you compete instead of collaborate. Joy feels risky because it might disappear. You say yes to things you hate out of fear that better won't come. You live like a starving mind at an abundant table. And until you shift from lack to trust, every decision will be rooted in fear. Because the scariest idea of all, that you're already enough right now. Level 16, productivity. Cult. Here your value is measured by output. Rest feels like guilt. Stillness feels like failure. You glorify the grind. Late nights, early mornings, endless to-do lists. Even joy becomes a checkbox. You say you're ambitious, but beneath it, fear. Fear of being seen as lazy. Fear of feeling useless. The glitch? You mistake motion for meaning. You're always doing, but rarely being. You forget who you are without your calendar. Rest isn't lazy. It's threatening to your identity. You wear burnout like a badge. You sacrifice presence for progress. But deep down, you know, achievement without alignment is just self-abandonment with better branding. And maybe, just maybe, you're not here to be efficient. You're here to be alive. Level 17, victim mode. At this level, you don't just experience pain. You become it. Your story is built around betrayal, abandonment, and loss. And it's not that those things didn't happen. It's that you've made them your identity. You replay the injustice, not to heal it, but to justify staying small. The glitch? Victimhood provides certainty. As long as you're the one who was wronged, you never have to risk, grow, or take uncomfortable responsibility. You attract saviors or villains because both reinforce your role. You fear power because it would require action. You say, I can't, but often it's I won't, unless someone else changes first. Liberation starts the moment you say, it wasn't my fault, but it is my responsibility now. Level 18, mask wearing. This is the level of performance. You become who you think the world wants. Polite, agreeable, successful, funny, whatever earns approval. You hide pain behind jokes, doubt behind smiles. You downplay your needs to keep the peace. The glitch? You lose track of where the mask ends and you begin. People love the version you show, but it feels hollow because they don't know the real you. Vulnerability feels dangerous. Authenticity feels reckless. So you wear the costume longer. You get good at it, maybe too good. But eventually, you start suffocating behind your own smile. And when someone finally asks how you're doing, really doing, you almost forget how to answer because you've been pretending for so long. Level 19, comparison glitch. Here, your worth is constantly measured against someone else's life. You scroll through highlight reels, then stare at your own behind the scenes in shame. They're younger, richer, happier, more attractive, or so it seems. Every win they have feels like a loss for you. The glitch? You're judging your unique path using someone else's map. You forget timing is sacred. You forget editing exists. You forget that some people shine in public and fall apart in private. At this level, your joy is conditional. I'll feel good once I catch up. But you never do. Because every time you reach a goal, someone else is already ahead. And you don't realize the race was never real to begin with. Level 20, ego celebration. This is the peak of the persona, the part where the ego not only exists, but thrives. You're the hero of every story, the smartest in the room, the center of attention. You craft your image carefully and protect it at all costs. Confidence? Not quite. It's armor. The glitch? You mistake the applause for authenticity. You build a version of yourself so polished, so perfect, that even you start to believe it. But underneath the bravado is fear. Fear of irrelevance, of being ordinary, of not mattering. You overcompensate to avoid confronting the void. You don't need to dominate, but you feel like you must. Because if you're not the main character, Who are you? Level 21, awakening. Itch. Something starts to feel off. You can't explain it. Life still looks good on paper. The routine, the roles, the rewards. But something inside you begins to stir. A subtle restlessness. A quiet question. Is this all there is? The glitch? You begin to see cracks in the system. Not just around you, but within you. Old ambitions feel empty. Conversations feel scripted. Even success feels suspicious. You start craving meaning over metrics, depth over dopamine. You might journal more, stay up later, thinking deeper. You sense that there's something beyond the mask you've worn, but you're not sure how to reach it. This level is not transformation, it's tension, a sacred itch that whispers, wake up, something real is waiting. Level 22, pain as teacher. This is the turning point, where you stop running from pain and start listening to it. You realize that every heartbreak, failure, and betrayal was pointing to something deeper. Not punishment, but instruction. The glitch? For the first time, you see pain not as an enemy, but as a mirror. You sit with your wounds instead of distracting from them. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this trying to show me? And when you do, the lessons flood in. Patterns get exposed. Inner wounds speak. You cry, not out of weakness, but release. Pain becomes sacred. A guide that walks you through the fire. Not to destroy you, but to refine you. Level 23. Pattern. Noticing. Here, the dots start connecting. You begin to see that the same situations, the same types of people, the same feelings, they've been looping for years. Different faces, same lessons. And suddenly, you ask, is this a coincidence or a pattern? The glitch? You realize that life isn't random. It's reflective. Everything is trying to teach you something. That toxic relationship, a mirror for your unhealed wounds, that dead-end job, a reflection of your fear of risk. You stop blaming and start decoding. Your life becomes a map, and the repeated detours aren't failures, they're clues. You can't change what you're not aware of, but now you're aware. And once you see a pattern clearly, you can choose differently. Level 24, Inner Child Echo. At this level, your reactions stop making sense until you realize they aren't coming from your adult self. They're echoes from the child within you. The tantrums, the people-pleasing, the fear of abandonment. They all trace back to moments when you felt unsafe, unseen, unloved. The glitch? You've been living out emotional blueprints written by a 5-year-old. You weren't overreacting. You were remembering. And now, for the first time, you sit with that inner child. You listen. You soothe. You stop shaming yourself for being too sensitive and start honoring the roots of that sensitivity. Healing begins not with fixing, but with reparenting. And when you meet your younger self with compassion, the cycle finally starts to dissolve. Level 25. First surrender. This is the moment you stop pretending to have it all figured out. You exhale. You let go. Not of your dreams, but of the illusion that control equals safety. The glitch? You've been gripping so tightly that your life couldn't breathe. Every outcome was forced. Every failure felt personal. But now, you soften. You say, I don't know, and maybe that's okay. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. You start trusting the process more than the plan. You move from force to flow. Surrender isn't quitting. It's aligning. You stop swimming upstream and allow the current to guide you. For the first time, peace isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. And that changes everything. Level 26. Unlearning begins. Now, the real work starts. Not adding more knowledge, but letting go of what was never true. You begin questioning beliefs that were handed to you before you could think for yourself, about success, about love, about your worth. The glitch? You realize you've been building your life on foundations poured by other people's fears. You start to see that normal isn't always healthy, and just the way it is might be a lie. Unlearning is disorienting, like wiping your mental slate clean, but it's also liberating. Every belief you release makes room for clarity. You begin to trade certainty for curiosity. And with every layer that falls away, you don't become less. You become real. Level 27. Craving silence. After all the noise, the drama, the striving, you begin to crave what once terrified you. Silence. Not just external quiet, but inner stillness. The glitch? You used to fill every pause with distraction, music, scrolling, talking, doing. Because in the silence, truth speaks. And at this level, you're finally ready to listen. You sit without needing to fix. You breathe without needing to run. You discover that silence isn't empty. It's full of knowing. Answers rise from places no book can touch. And for the first time, you feel your own presence without performance. Stillness stops being uncomfortable and starts feeling like home. You realize peace isn't something you find out there. It's something you remember in here. Level 28. Empathy. Emergence. Something shifts. You start seeing beyond behavior, into the wound beneath it. You no longer react to people's anger, coldness, or chaos the same way. You feel their fear, their ache, their story. The glitch? You realize that most people aren't cruel. They're hurting. And so are you. This isn't about tolerating abuse. It's about recognizing the shared ache of the human condition. Judgment softens. Compassion deepens. You don't just know that others are suffering. You feel it. Even those who hurt you are seen with new eyes. Not as villains, but as mirrors. Empathy doesn't make you weaker. It makes you wider. And suddenly, connection isn't based on agreement, but on shared humanity. Level 29. Mirror realization. At this level, life stops being random and starts becoming reflective. You begin to see every person, every trigger, every moment as a mirror. The glitch? You've spent years reacting to others, not realizing they were showing you yourself. That friend's neediness, your fear of dependence, that boss's control, your hidden desire for dominance. You stop asking, why are they like that? And start asking, why does this affect me so deeply? Every judgment, every irritation becomes a portal inward. The world stops being something that happens to you and starts becoming something that responds to you. This doesn't make life easier. It makes it real, because now every experience is feedback, and you're finally paying attention. Level 30, Identity Dissolution, Part 1. Here, the mask starts to melt, not with force, but with truth. You begin to see that the you you've been defending was constructed. A patchwork of conditioning, survival strategies, and borrowed roles. The glitch? You realize you've been living a performance, not out of deceit, but out of necessity. The achiever, the peacemaker, the rebel. All masks worn to stay safe, accepted, or significant. But now, they feel heavy, inauthentic, foreign. You begin to ask, who am I without my wounds, without the applause, without the armor? And the answer doesn't come in words. It comes in silence, space, and surrender. This is not the death of self. It's the beginning of seeing that self was never fixed. Level 31. Trigger awareness. Now the explosions don't just happen. You notice them. The tight chest, the rising heat, the urge to lash out, shut down, or run. But instead of reacting blindly, you pause. The glitch? You realize that triggers aren't interruptions. They're invitations. Invitations to meet the parts of you that are still unhealed, still afraid, still believing old stories. You stop blaming the messenger, the rude text, the distant partner, the slow driver, and start decoding the message. What inside me is asking to be seen? Triggers become teachers. They don't control you anymore. They guide you. And in the space between stimulus and response, you begin to reclaim something powerful, choice. And with that, healing truly begins. Level 32, mindful pausing. This is the birth of inner space. You no longer move impulsively from thought to action, from emotion to reaction. You pause, not to freeze, but to witness. The glitch? You realize how much of life you've been sleepwalking through, running on patterns you never questioned. Now the pause becomes sacred. A breath before you speak, a moment before you judge, a stillness before you respond. In this space, clarity arises. You begin to see that presence isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing one thing fully. You slow down, not because you're lazy, but because you're awake. And in that stillness, life softens. Reality sharpens. The moment opens. And for once, you're truly in it. Level 33, shadow spotting. Here, you meet the parts of yourself you once buried. The jealous one, the selfish one, the angry, bitter, manipulative one. Not to shame them, but to understand them. The glitch? You've been projecting your shadow onto others your whole life, calling it them when it was you. Now, you begin to reclaim those exiled fragments, the ones you hid to be loved, to be good, to be accepted. You realize healing isn't about lightwashing the dark, it's about integration. You stop performing perfection and start practicing honesty. Every shadow you embrace becomes less of a threat and more of a guide. And as the light grows inside you, it doesn't blind the dark, it includes it. Level 34, stillness, shock. You finally slow down, and it hits you. The noise wasn't just outside, it was inside. For years, you mistook movement for meaning, chaos for passion, busyness for worth. Now, in the stillness, everything you've been avoiding surfaces. Loneliness, grief, truth. The glitch? You thought stillness would bring peace, but first, it brings clarity. And clarity isn't always gentle. You hear the thoughts beneath the thoughts. You feel the ache you kept outrunning. But you don't numb this time. You stay. And in the staying, something breaks open. Not you, but the illusion. You realize stillness isn't empty. It's sacred space. It strips away what isn't real. So what remains is. And what remains is you. Level 35, nervous system. Clarity. Now you begin to understand. It wasn't that you were too sensitive or overreacting. Your nervous system was in survival mode. The glitch? You spent years judging your responses without ever listening to them. That shutdown wasn't weakness. It was protection. That anxiety wasn't irrational. It was memory stored in the body. You realize trauma isn't just what happened to you. It's what stayed inside you. Now you breathe differently. You speak gently to your system. You create safety from within instead of waiting for the world to provide it. Healing stops being a mindset and becomes embodied. And as your nervous system softens, you don't just feel better, you feel safe. Possibly for the first time ever. Level 36, value shifting. What once drove you no longer moves you. Status, speed, popularity, hustle, they lose their shine. Now you crave peace, authenticity, depth, presence. The glitch? You realize you've been chasing borrowed values. What others told you mattered. You climbed ladders that led nowhere, collected achievements that didn't fulfill you. At this level, your compass recalibrates. You stop asking, what will make me look good? And start asking, what actually feels good? You begin honoring what nourishes you, even if it looks simple, quiet, or unimpressive to others. You no longer perform meaning, you live it. And the more you align with what's real for you, the more life flows. Not faster, but truer. And finally, that's enough. Level 37, craving truth. At this level, fluff and fakery become unbearable. You no longer have patience for half answers, masked intentions, or sugar-coated lies, especially your own. The glitch? You spent years pretending, saying you were fine, smiling when you weren't, living a version of truth that kept the peace but killed your spirit. Now, you crave rawness. Truth, even when it hurts, feels cleaner than comfort. You'd rather be cracked open by honesty than held together by illusion. And it's not just external truth, it's inner. You start asking real questions. What do I truly want? What am I pretending not to know? Truth becomes a compass, not always convenient, not always pretty, but always sacred, because now, only real will do. Level 38, forgiveness as freedom. This isn't the fluffy kind of forgiveness. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt or excusing the damage. It's about releasing the grip. The glitch? You thought holding on to pain protected you, but it only imprisoned you. At this level, you realize forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's not approval. It's liberation. You stop drinking the poison hoping they'll suffer. You set the weight down, not because they deserve it, but because you do. And maybe hardest of all, you begin to forgive yourself for what you didn't know, for who you had to become to survive, for how long you stayed asleep. This is forgiveness as reclamation, not weakness, not forgetting, just choosing freedom over the wound. Level 39, the void. You've let go of old identities, beliefs, patterns, but nothing new has fully replaced them. Welcome to the in-between. The glitch? This space feels terrifying, like free fall with no landing. You're no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. You question everything. You feel numb, disconnected, lost. But this isn't regression. It's rebirth. The void isn't a mistake. It's a pause. The sacred silence before a new song begins. Most people run back to the familiar here. But if you stay, something emerges. Not from effort, but from emptiness. The void strips away what's false so the real can arrive. This isn't the end of you. It's the space where your true self begins to whisper. Level 40, Identity Dissolution, Part 2. In the void, something unthinkable happens. You stop needing to be someone. Not out of defeat, but out of realization. The glitch? You see that you, the personality, the preferences, even your name, was a beautifully crafted illusion. Useful, but not ultimate. You're no longer just the thinker, the doer, the label. You're the awareness behind it all. The self you clung to starts to dissolve, not in sadness, but in spaciousness. You watch thoughts rise and fall like clouds. Emotions pass through like weather, but you remain formless, vast, unshaken. There's no need to prove, defend, or perform. You've remembered. Your being was never based on identity. It was always the quiet presence, watching it unfold. Level 41, Pattern Breaker. This is where awareness becomes action. You've seen the loops. Now you step out of them. The toxic relationship? You leave. The self-sabotage? You pause. The old reflexes? You interrupt them. The glitch? Breaking patterns isn't glamorous. It's gritty. It feels unnatural, awkward, even lonely. You grieve the familiar pain you once mistook for home. People may not understand. Old versions of you will beg to return. But you move forward anyway, not because it's easy, but because you finally can. At this level, healing isn't just insight, it's choice. You choose different, even when it's hard, even when it costs you, because now you know freedom doesn't come from knowing better. It comes from doing differently. Level 42, Deep Listening. At this level, you no longer just hear, you listen to others, to your body, to your intuition, to silence. The glitch? You realize you've spent most of your life waiting to speak, defend, or fix, not actually receiving what's being said. Now, you begin to listen without preparing a response, without judgment, without interruption. You start to sense the meaning beneath the words, the fear behind the anger, the ache behind the silence. And most powerfully, you turn that same listening inward. Your body speaks. Your intuition whispers. Even your resistance becomes a voice worth hearing. This is not passive. It's presence. And through listening, you begin to understand truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper we've ignored. Level 43, body reconnection. After years of living in your head, you come home to your body. Not as an object, not as a machine, but as a living guide. The glitch? You were taught to ignore your body's signals, to push through pain, silence hunger, numb emotion. But now, you listen. The tension in your shoulders, the flutter in your gut, the tightness in your chest. These aren't inconveniences. They're messages. You stop seeing your body as separate from your healing and start seeing it as the stage where healing happens. Movement becomes medicine. Breath becomes sacred. You don't just exist in your body, you live there. And for the first time, it's not a battleground. It's a home. Level 44, boundary awakening. At this level, you realize that love without boundaries isn't love. It's self-abandonment. The glitch? You used to say yes to be liked, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace. But every yes that violated your truth became a silent no to yourself. Now, you feel the difference. You recognize that your energy is sacred, that protecting your peace is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. You stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, overextending. No becomes a full sentence. Discomfort becomes tolerable. Guilt transforms into growth. And though setting boundaries may cost you some connections, it restores your connection to yourself. Because every time you honor your limits, you teach the world, I'm not available for anything that dishonors me. Level 45, deserving joy. Joy used to feel suspicious, like something you had to earn, perform for, or postpone until all the problems were fixed. The glitch? You believed joy was a reward for perfection, not a right of existence. But now, you begin to let it in, without guilt, without apology. You laugh without waiting for the other shoe to drop. You celebrate small moments without needing them to be productive. You stop shrinking your happiness to make others comfortable. You realize joy isn't selfish, it's nourishing, and you don't need to justify it. You just need to receive it, fully, because now you understand you were never too broken for joy. You were just taught to believe you didn't deserve it. Level 46, compassion for self. At this level, the war within finally begins to quiet. You stop attacking yourself for not healing fast enough, for staying too long, for not knowing then what you know now. The glitch? You thought shame would make you better, but it only made you smaller. Now you look at your past selves, not with judgment, but with tenderness. You see the scared child, the hurting teen, the exhausted adult, and instead of critiquing them, you hold them. You whisper, you did the best you could with what you had. Self-compassion isn't weakness, it's repair. It's the medicine shame can't offer. And slowly, the parts of you hiding in the dark start to come forward because they finally feel safe. Level 47, reality. Questioning. Everything starts to feel less solid. Not in a fearful way, but in a curious one. You begin to wonder, is the world out there or in here? The glitch? You've been taught that reality is fixed, that what you see is all there is. But now, you realize perception shapes experience. Your thoughts influence outcomes. Your emotions color the world. You stop blindly trusting the lens and start cleaning it. You begin to ask, is this truth or just conditioning? You question the stories society sold you, the rules no one ever explained. And in doing so, you don't become disconnected. You become awake. Because once you stop assuming reality is real, you start participating in creating it. Level 48, letting go of control. You've spent years gripping the wheel, planning, fixing, forcing outcomes. Control made you feel safe. Predictability felt like peace. But now, you begin to loosen the grip. The glitch? You thought control? Power. But really, it was fear in disguise. At this level, you begin to trust life itself. You stop micromanaging people's opinions, the timing of your dreams, the unfolding of healing. You shift from forcing to flowing. This isn't giving up. It's getting aligned. You let go, not because you're defeated, but because you finally trust what's unfolding. And ironically, in surrendering control, you discover real power. The ability to respond with presence, not panic, because peace was never in control. It was in release. Level 49, peace with uncertainty. At this level, the need to know dissolves. You stop demanding clear answers, timelines, guarantees. The glitch? You were taught that certainty equals safety, that not knowing means you're lost. But now, you realize uncertainty is where life actually happens. You no longer rush to label things as good or bad, right or wrong. You start living the questions, trusting the unfolding. You realize that mystery isn't chaos, it's magic. And in that space of not knowing, you find something rare, peace. You learn to sit in the unknown without trying to fix it, without rushing to the next chapter. Because the present moment isn't a waiting room, it's everything. And not knowing, that's where knowing begins. Level 50, breakthrough collapse. This is the moment the ego can't hold the weight anymore. The identities, the roles, the masks, they start to crumble. Not by force, but by truth. The glitch? You thought breakdowns were failures. But this one, it's sacred. You may cry, isolate, question everything. Not because you're falling apart, but because you're finally falling through the illusions, through the lies you believed about who you had to be. It feels like a collapse, but it's actually a clearing. You stop performing for the world and start listening to the soul beneath it all. The old you dissolves, and in the rubble, something still and unshaken remains. This isn't the end. This is the threshold. Level 51, ego death. First glitch. This is where the you you've known disappears. The voice in your head, the one narrating, judging, planning, defending, it goes quiet or collapses. The glitch? You realize the self you've been protecting was never solid. It was a story built from memories and fears. Now, that story glitches. Who you thought you were starts to fade. It's disorienting. Even terrifying, but also freeing, because what remains is awareness, untouched by identity. You're not your thoughts, not your trauma, not even your name. You're the watcher, the witness, and in this space, you taste something timeless. This isn't a metaphor, it's an experience. The ego doesn't die forever here, but for the first time, it's not in charge. Level 52. Existential floating. You're not grounded in identity anymore, but you're not fully integrated either. You feel like a soul between worlds, detached, observing, unsure if you're dissolving or awakening. The glitch? You're untethered. Old desires no longer motivate you. The future feels abstract. Even language feels clunky, like trying to describe the ocean with a teaspoon. You question what's real, what matters, and who, if anyone, is steering this ship. But here's the secret. This is normal. Floating means you've left the shore, but haven't reached land. You're in the liminal space, sacred, raw, silent. Let it hold you. Don't rush the next identity. Don't rebuild too soon. In this formlessness, something real is forming. You're becoming space itself. Level 53, cosmic laughter. Suddenly it hits you, not as a thought, but as a wave. It was all a game. The striving, the stories, the seriousness, the entire identity parade. And you laugh, not out of mockery, but from a place deeper than logic. The glitch? You realize how hilariously hard you tried to control the uncontrollable, to prove the unprovable, to protect the unreal. Everything you once clung to feels light, even absurd. You see the cosmic joke that the self was never in danger, because the self was never real. The universe isn't a courtroom, it's a playground. And for the first time, you stop trying to solve life and start dancing with it. Because joy is truth unresisted. Level 54, heart awakening. After all the breakdowns, breakthroughs, and silence, you feel it. Your heart opens, not just emotionally, but energetically. The glitch? You realize you've been living armored, guarded, logical. Even in healing, you stayed in your head. But now, the heart speaks, wordless, vast, undeniable. You begin to feel everything more deeply. Joy, grief, beauty, compassion. You cry without knowing why. You love without needing a reason. Vulnerability stops feeling like a risk. It becomes a gift. The heart doesn't ask for control or guarantees. It simply offers itself. And in doing so, it transforms you. You're no longer just witnessing life. You're feeling it. Fully, nakedly, bravely. And in that rawness, you don't break. You blossom. Level 55. Nature sync. At this level, you stop seeing nature as something outside of you and start recognizing it as your reflection. The glitch? You once believed you were separate, above it, smarter, but now you feel the pulse of the earth inside your own chest, the way trees don't rush, the way seasons shift without apology, the way the sun doesn't ask to shine, it just does. You begin syncing your rhythm to nature's wisdom, resting without guilt, growing without force, letting go without panic. You no longer fight time. You flow with it. Nature becomes your teacher, your mirror, your medicine, because now you know you're not living on the earth. You are the earth, remembering itself through breath. Level 56, inner stillness. This isn't silence as the absence of sound. It's the presence of peace. At this level, you no longer chase highs or fight lows. You rest in the calm beneath it all. The glitch? You used to mistake stillness for stagnation. Now, you realize its power, unshakable, unmoved. You don't need constant stimulation to feel alive. You don't panic in the pause. The need to react dissolves. You begin to respond, slowly, intentionally. You feel full without doing, clear without thinking. Stillness becomes your anchor. Your mind softens. Your breath deepens. Your nervous system sighs. In a world spinning fast, you've become the eye of the storm. And in this stillness, you don't disappear. You finally arrive. Level 57, energy sensitivity. Words become secondary. You start feeling what people mean, even when they say nothing. Rooms speak, eyes whisper. Your body picks up what logic misses. The glitch? You once ignored your intuition, dismissed gut feelings, explained away discomfort. Now, you can't. You feel when someone's energy is off, even if their words are perfect. You sense truth, heaviness, openness, resistance. Everything carries a frequency. You realize you've been swimming in energy your whole life. And only now are you learning to listen. You stop forcing connections that don't feel right. You stop staying where your spirit shrinks. Energy becomes your compass. You don't just hear truth anymore. You feel it. And in that feeling, you finally start trusting you. Level 58, timelessness. You begin slipping out of linear time. Minutes stretch, hours vanish, presence deepens. The glitch? You realize that time isn't fixed. It bends to awareness. When you're truly present, the moment expands. When you're lost in thought, time evaporates. You stop obsessing over age, clocks, calendars. You realize the past is a memory. The future is a projection. Only now is real, and now is eternal. You don't rush anymore. You don't delay joy. Urgency dissolves, replaced by rhythm. Life unfolds, not on a schedule, but in perfect timing. You move when it's time. You rest when it's sacred. And you begin to live, not in deadlines, but in depth. Because the soul, it doesn't wear a watch. Level 59, true presence. You're no longer halfway anywhere. No longer in the past while speaking, or in the future while listening. You're here, fully. The glitch? You spent years multitasking your way out of the moment, believing presence was a luxury. But now you see, presence is power. You taste your food, you feel your breath. You see people, really see them. You're not thinking of the next thing while living this one. Time slows, attention sharpens, life gets vivid. Even silence becomes meaningful. You realize this moment isn't a bridge to something better. It is the destination. Nothing is missing. Nothing is later. Presence isn't passive. It's radical. It's rebellion against the noise. And it's where life has been waiting for you. Level 60. Simulation. Realization. You begin to question everything. Not with fear, but fascination. Reality feels designed. Patterns repeat. Synchronicities multiply. People enter your life like code. The glitch? You start seeing life not as random, but scripted. Not as fake, but intelligently interactive. You're not trapped in a simulation. You're co-creating one. The rules bend with belief. Thoughts influence matter. Intention shapes outcomes. You don't dismiss reality. You start playing with it. Your inner world projects outward. Coincidence becomes communication. You realize, maybe this isn't a rigid world. Maybe it's a responsive mirror. And with that, fear fades. Because if life is a simulation, you're not a prisoner. You're the player. Awake, curious, and finally aware that the game was never against you. Level 61, non-reaction. You no longer take the bait. The trigger happens, but you don't flinch. You observe. The glitch? You used to think not reacting meant being passive or weak. But now you realize non-reaction is power. It's spaciousness. It's freedom. You're not suppressing. You're choosing. Not out of fear, but clarity. You see the drama, the manipulation, the chaos, and you stay centered. You don't match energy. You protect yours. You respond when it's true, not when it's loud. The world may expect instant reactions, emotional spikes, quick comebacks, but you offer stillness instead. Not as a tactic, but as a way of being. And in that stillness, your peace becomes untouchable. Because control isn't in what happens. It's in how you hold it. Level 62, emotional alchemy. Here, you stop resisting your emotions and start transforming them. Anger becomes a boundary. Sadness becomes depth. Fear becomes fuel. The glitch? You used to label emotions as good or bad, positive or negative. Now you see them as messengers, each one sacred, each one offering something vital. You feel fully without drowning. You express without exploding. You learn to sit with the fire without flinching. And in doing so, it becomes light. You stop trying to fix your feelings and instead listen to them. Alchemy begins when you stop exiling your pain and start inviting it in. Because the gold you're looking for, it's hidden inside the very emotions you were taught to suppress. This is where feeling becomes freedom. Level 63, soul memory. You start remembering things you were never taught. truths that don't come from books, but from within. The glitch? You realize not everything you know was learned in this lifetime. A certain place feels familiar. A stranger feels like family. A lesson feels like review. This isn't déjà vu. It's soul memory. Wisdom stored in your being, surfacing when you're finally still enough to receive it. You stop identifying solely as a body, a name, a timeline. You feel ancient, infinite. Your dreams become more vivid, your intuition sharper, and you no longer see healing as becoming someone new, but as remembering who you've always been. The soul never forgets. It just waits for the noise to fade. Level 64. Detachment from outcome. You still have desires, dreams, intentions, but now you're not attached to how they unfold. The glitch? You once measured success by results. You chased, clung, controlled. And when things didn't go your way, you spiraled. But here, you act from alignment and release the outcome. You give your best, then let it go. Peace replaces obsession. Curiosity replaces control. You don't need it to happen to feel whole. This isn't apathy. It's trust. You trust timing, trust yourself, trust the unseen orchestration. Ironically, by detaching from the result, you open the door for greater possibilities. You stop chasing what's meant to be and start becoming what can't be missed. Because what's real for you, it always finds its way. Level 65. Peace with death. You stop avoiding the inevitable and start making peace with it. Death isn't a threat now. It's a teacher. The glitch? You once lived as if you had forever, yet feared the end. But here, you look it in the eye, not with panic, but presence. You realize fearing death is often fearing unlived life. So you begin living differently, more honestly, more presently. You release grudges faster. You speak your heart louder. You love without hesitation. Death becomes a compass, not a curse, reminding you what truly matters. You stop chasing immortality in things and find eternity in moments. And strangely, in accepting the end, you finally feel free to live, fully, now, without anything held back. Level 66. Ancestral healing. You begin to realize your pain didn't start with you. The fears, patterns, and beliefs you carry, many were passed down. Generations of survival, silence, trauma. The glitch? You thought it was your anxiety, your shame, but it was inherited. At this level, you stop blaming and start breaking cycles. You feel the weight, and instead of passing it forward, you transmute it. You cry the tears your ancestors couldn't. You speak what they weren't allowed to say. You choose love where they chose fear. And in doing so, you don't just heal yourself. You heal the line. You become the turning point, the rewrite, the answer to a prayer whispered decades before you were born. Level 67. Timeline jump. You realize your future isn't fixed. It's fluid. Every choice, belief, and intention shifts the path beneath your feet. The glitch? You once thought destiny was something you waited for. But here, you see, you're not just walking a timeline. You're choosing one. And you can choose differently now. You stop repeating the old story. You release identities tied to pain. You act as the version of you who already healed, already succeeded, already remembered. Reality responds. People shift. Opportunities align. You feel it. You've moved. Not physically, but energetically. You jumped timelines. And the beauty is, you didn't need permission, just awareness. Because once you realize your future is a frequency, you start tuning in to the one you deserve. Level 68. Gratitude state. Gratitude stops being a practice. It becomes your baseline. You're no longer thankful for something. You're thankful as a state of being. The glitch? You used to chase joy through accomplishments. Now, you feel joy for the simple, the silent, the present, a breath, a sunrise, a touch. Gratitude flows without effort. It doesn't ignore pain. It holds it with grace. You stop measuring what's missing and start witnessing what is. This isn't forced positivity. It's awakened presence. Even in uncertainty, you whisper, "Thank you." Gratitude becomes your currency, your anchor, your way home. And in this state, life opens. Not because everything is perfect, but because you finally are, not lacking, not waiting, just deeply, humbly aware. Level 69, reverse. Aging. Here, something wild happens. You start feeling younger as you grow older. Not in body, but in spirit. The glitch? You were taught aging equals decline. But at this level, every year strips away illusion, heaviness, and roles you no longer need. You reclaim curiosity. You laugh deeper, breathe slower, love wider. Your movements are intentional. Your presence, magnetic. You're not weighed down by proving anymore. You're light, childlike, not childish, wise, not weary. You care less about image and more about essence. You stop aging toward an end and start expanding into infinity. This isn't denial of time. It's harmony with truth. Your soul isn't counting years. It's remembering how to shine. And that glow, it only gets brighter. Level 70. Thoughtless. Knowing you stop needing to think your way to truth. Because now you feel it instantly. A calm certainty arises that bypasses logic, analysis, and debate. The glitch? You once believed knowing had to be earned. Through books, credentials, arguments, but here, wisdom arrives in silence. You walk into a room and just know. A decision appears without overthinking. Your intuition speaks, and for once, you listen. This isn't guesswork, it's resonance. You don't explain it, you embody it. The mind quiets, the gut leads, and the soul nods. You've moved beyond gathering knowledge. Now you channel it. And the most powerful truths, they don't shout. They arise gently in the spaces where thought finally gets out of the way. Level 71, inner light activation. You no longer seek light. You remember it's been inside you all along. The glitch? You were taught to look outward for validation, guidance, worth. But now something ignites from within. A glow that isn't loud but undeniable. You walk into a space and people feel it. Not your presence, but your frequency. You don't need to prove, impress, or convince. Your light does the speaking. It radiates through your stillness, your words, your silence. This isn't ego. It's essence. You become a mirror that helps others remember their light too. You no longer hide to fit in. You shine to remind. And you realize your light was never meant to compete. It was meant to guide. Level 72, interconnectedness. You begin to feel what words can't fully express. There is no separation. The glitch? You once believed you were isolated, a single mind in a skin-wrapped body, moving through a world of others. But now, you feel the web. You breathe, and somewhere, a tree exhales. You smile, and another heart softens. You cry, and the rain understands. The illusion of me versus them dissolves. You realize every action ripples, every thought echoes. Compassion deepens, judgments fall. You no longer try to care. You can't help it. Their pain is your pain. Their joy is yours. And in this sacred entanglement, you don't disappear. You expand. Because love isn't something you give. It's what you are. Together. Level 73. Divine humor. At this level, you don't just awaken. You laugh. Not from mockery, but from recognition. The glitch? You spent lifetimes taking everything so seriously. Your identity, your mission, your suffering. But now, you zoom out, and it's all hilarious. The ego's drama. The spiritual one-upmanship. the idea that you ever needed to earn worth. You see, the universe isn't just wise, it's playful. Synchronicities become winks. Setbacks become plot twists. You don't need everything to make sense because it makes magic. And in that laughter, tension dissolves. Light floods in. You become both sacred and silly, a cosmic paradox in motion. Because the truth is, when you finally stop clenching, the divine walks in, smiling. Level 74, multi-self-awareness. You no longer see yourself as a single identity. You recognize the layers. The glitch? You once thought you was fixed. One personality, one timeline, one truth. But now, you meet your many selves. The inner child, the future self, the shadow, the protector, the dreamer, the observer. All valid. All you. You realize you've played countless roles. Not just in this life, but across lifetimes, moments, moods. You stop clinging to one version. You hold space for all of them. Integration replaces fragmentation. You're not confused. You're complete. And in this awareness, you gain access to deeper wisdom, compassion, and choice. Because when you know all yourselves, you no longer fear who might show up. You welcome them home. Level 75, service calling. You no longer ask, what do I want to do? Instead, you ask, how can I serve? The glitch? You once thought purpose was a personal goal, something to chase for fulfillment. But now, you feel something deeper, a pull, a quiet knowing that your healing wasn't just for you. It was preparation. Now, you're called to give, to uplift, to contribute, not out of obligation, but from overflow. You don't need to save the world. You just need to offer your light where it's needed. You realize the soul doesn't crave recognition. It craves resonance. And when you serve from truth, not ego, the universe moves through you. Because true purpose isn't found, it's answered. Level 76, true surrender. This isn't giving up. It's giving in to what always was. The glitch? You used to think surrender meant weakness, defeat, losing control. But here, surrender feels like coming home. You stop resisting what is. You stop forcing what isn't. You trust the unfolding without needing to direct it. Not because you don't care, but because you finally trust life. Even when it's unclear, even when it's silent, you let go, not out of despair, but out of reverence. You float, you follow, you listen, and everything begins to align without effort. The river you were fighting, it was always flowing for you. And now that you've stopped swimming upstream, you realize surrender isn't the end. It's the beginning. Level 77, Creator. Glitch. You wake up to a truth that changes everything. You're not just a character in the story. You're the one writing it. The glitch? You spent most of life reacting, surviving, adapting, thinking reality was happening to you. But now you feel the shift. Reality responds to you. Your thoughts shape form. Your beliefs bend outcomes. Your energy pulls possibilities into view. You don't manifest from desperation. You create from alignment. You're not begging the universe. You are the universe, in motion, with a pen in hand. Each moment becomes a canvas. Intention becomes ink. And fear? Just a forgotten script. You stop waiting for the story to change and start rewriting it, one conscious breath at a time. Level 78, soul-sourced action. You no longer move from pressure, fear, or expectation. You move from truth. The glitch? You used to chase validation, hustle for worth, act from survival. But now, your actions come from alignment, not anxiety. You no longer ask, will they approve? You ask, is this me? Every choice flows from the soul, not to prove anything, but to express everything. Your doing becomes sacred. Your yes is clean. Your no is clear. Productivity loses its grip. Presence becomes the fuel. You're no longer driven. You're guided. This isn't laziness. It's precision. No wasted energy. No forced effort. Just soul-deep movement. And the deeper you trust your inner rhythm, the more life meets you with effortless momentum. Level 79. Karma clarity. At this level, karma stops being a cosmic punishment and starts becoming conscious feedback. The glitch? You used to see karma as fate, something handed down, inescapable. But now, you see it as response. Every thought, every choice, every action carries energy, and that energy ripples. You begin to witness how your past actions created present patterns, not from guilt, but from awareness. Karma isn't revenge, it's a mirror. And now, you stop reacting blindly and start responding wisely. You plant better seeds. You clean up your wake. Not because you're afraid, but because you're awake. You don't outrun karma. You outgrow it. And with that clarity, you become a conscious cause, not just a conditioned effect. Level 80, sacred solitude. You no longer fear being alone. You cherish it. The glitch? You used to mistake solitude for loneliness, emptiness, or failure. But now it's sacred. Alone, you meet your deepest truths. Alone, your intuition speaks clearly. Alone, you finally stop performing. Solitude becomes your sanctuary. Not isolation, but intimacy with yourself. You start seeking quiet, not as escape, but as nourishment. You realize that the deepest companionship happens in the silent spaces within. Your solitude isn't rejection of connection. It's preparation for deeper, truer relationships. Because once you enjoy your own company, you become magnetic, not needy. Whole, not waiting. In sacred solitude, you find something rare. You. And from that place, every relationship blossoms into authenticity. Level 81. Divine Masculine Awakening. You awaken a new version of strength, not domination, but grounded presence. The glitch? You were taught that masculine meant force, hardness, or suppression. But now, you embody strength without rigidity, leadership without ego, clarity without control. The divine masculine within you becomes protective, not possessive, stable, yet fluid, purposeful, yet compassionate. You no longer equate vulnerability with weakness. You see it as courage. Integrity becomes your compass. Actions align with truth. Your presence offers safety, space, and structure without sacrificing gentleness. You realize power isn't about dominance. It's about grounded authenticity. And when you live from this place, you inspire trust rather than demand respect. Because true strength doesn't intimidate. It uplifts, it anchors, it leads from love. Level 82, Divine Feminine Awakening. You awaken a deeper current within you, one of receptivity, intuition, and flow. The glitch? You were taught that feminine meant weak, passive, or emotional. But now, you embody softness without losing strength, sensitivity without fragility, intuition without doubt. The divine feminine energy within you nurtures, heals, and transforms effortlessly. You honor rest, intuition, and creativity as sacred, not indulgent. Your presence becomes magnetic, drawing in rather than chasing. You don't just listen, you hold space. You don't just nurture, you heal. The feminine within you flows without force, creating beauty from chaos. You realize true strength doesn't shout or push. It whispers, invites, and transforms through love. Because softness isn't weakness. It's the quiet power that changes everything. Level 83, Energetic Discernment. You become intentional about what and who you let into your space, physically, emotionally, energetically. The glitch? You once allowed everything in. Noise, drama, draining relationships. But now, your energy feels sacred. You sense quickly when something is off. You no longer justify red flags or ignore subtle discomfort. Your boundaries become energetic, not just verbal. Your yes is powerful. Your no, protective. Discernment doesn't isolate you. It elevates you. You attract resonance, not chaos. You realize your life is shaped by energy exchanges, and you choose wisely. Not from fear, but from deep self-respect. The clearer your energy becomes, the clearer your life becomes. Because discernment isn't judgment, it's clarity. And clarity is where peace finally stays. Level 84. Authentic expression. You stop filtering yourself, not recklessly, but courageously. The glitch. You once traded authenticity for acceptance, muting truths to fit in or be liked. But now, something shifts. You speak clearly, honestly, without apology. You express your boundaries, desires, fears, dreams, openly, unapologetically. This isn't harshness, it's clarity. Your words align with your heart. Your actions align with your truth. People either meet you authentically or fall away. And either way, you're at peace. Your voice becomes magnetic, not because it's loud, but because it's real. You stop performing to be understood and start living to be free. Authenticity isn't a tactic, it's liberation. And finally, you're free to be seen, heard, and known, exactly as you are. Level 85. Timeline neutrality. You stop judging your past, fearing your future, or clinging desperately to the present. Every timeline feels equally sacred. The glitch? You once saw the past as a mistake to fix, the future as a problem to solve, and the present as fleeting. But here, you see them as threads, weaving together perfectly. You trust your journey without needing it to make sense immediately. Regrets fade. Anxiety softens. You realize there are no wrong turns, only lessons. You're neutral, not indifferent, open, not passive. Your past shaped you. Your present holds you. Your future calls you. And you honor each equally. Because now you see clearly every timeline, every choice, every moment brought you exactly where your soul intended. Level 86. Truth frequency. You begin vibrating at a frequency where dishonesty simply can't survive. The glitch? You used to tolerate small lies, half-truths, and hidden intentions, even from yourself. But now, anything misaligned becomes unbearable. Truth becomes your baseline. You no longer need explanations. You feel resonance. People who don't align naturally fall away. Those who do draw closer. You speak truth gently, firmly, without fear of rejection. You live transparently. Authenticity isn't optional anymore. It's necessary. Your energy demands integrity, clarity, and alignment. And because of this, your life naturally simplifies. Drama fades. Conflict dissolves. Only truth remains. Because now, you know clearly, truth isn't just spoken. It's embodied. And in embodying truth, you finally become a living magnet for alignment. Level 87. Love without condition. You stop placing terms on love. The glitch? You once believed love had to be earned, deserved, or proven, even by yourself. But here, love flows freely, generously, endlessly. You don't love because someone meets your expectations. You love because love is your natural state. This isn't naive or blind, it's deeply wise. You love others exactly as they are, without needing to fix, change, or own them. You love yourself fiercely, without conditions of perfection. Your love isn't transactional anymore. It's transformative. It heals because it doesn't demand. It liberates because it doesn't bind. And now, love isn't something you seek or lose. It's something you simply are. Boundless, steady, unconditional. Because love, you finally understand, never runs out. Level 88. Embodied wisdom. Knowledge stops being something you accumulate and starts being something you embody. The glitch? You once believed wisdom lived in books, experts, teachings, but now you realize it lives in your bones. It's felt, not memorized. You carry wisdom in your posture, your breath, your presence. Your experiences become integrated into a quiet knowing, deeper than logic, clearer than words. You no longer just speak wisdom. You radiate it. Your energy teaches more than your words ever could. You're calm without effort, clear without forcing. People feel wisdom just by being near you. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. Because true wisdom isn't loud. It's quiet, lived, embodied. It's not something you prove. It's something you become, effortlessly, truthfully, completely. Level 89, oneness glitch. Here, separation dissolves completely. You no longer see yourself as separate from others, nature, or even existence itself. The glitch? Your entire life, you believed in the illusion of other. But now, that illusion shatters. You feel deeply interconnected. One breath, one heartbeat, one consciousness. Someone's joy becomes yours, their pain too. Nature isn't just a backdrop, it's part of your being. You recognize yourself in every face, every tree, every star. Compassion becomes effortless, judgment impossible. You no longer see differences, you see reflections. This isn't a concept, it's an embodied realization. You are the ocean, and every life is a wave. Separate forms, same essence. And in that profound recognition, love expands beyond limits. Because oneness isn't belief, it's your true nature. Level 90, sacred silence. Here, silence becomes your greatest teacher. Not emptiness, but profound fullness. The glitch? You once filled every moment with noise, thoughts, words, distractions. But now, silence feels sacred, alive, nourishing. You listen deeper than ever before, not just to words, but to the spaces between them. Your mind quiets effortlessly. Answers arise without thinking. Wisdom appears without effort. You begin understanding that silence isn't passive. It's deeply active. It holds insight, truth, and clarity. In this quiet, your intuition speaks loudest. Level 91, light body activation. Your awareness expands beyond physical limits. Your energy shifts, becoming lighter, more radiant. The glitch? You once identified purely as a physical body, heavy, limited, separate. But now, you sense something deeper, a subtle, luminous field of pure energy around and within you. Your light body awakens, making you more sensitive, intuitive, and vibrant. Your presence becomes magnetic, healing, transformative. You feel emotions deeply, but without attachment. Physical sensations become fluid, transcendent. You're not floating away. You're grounding into higher frequencies. Reality responds instantly to your energetic shifts. Your words carry a new resonance. You effortlessly inspire others simply by existing authentically. And you realize clearly, you aren't just a body. You're embodied light, limitless, radiant, awake. Because now you know, you're here to illuminate. Level 92, observer collapse. Here, even the observer within you dissolves. The glitch? You once believed you were the watcher, separate from experiences, emotions, thoughts. But now, you recognize even the observer was another subtle form of ego. At this level, there's no one left to witness, just pure witnessing itself. No thinker behind thoughts, no feeler behind feelings, only seamless awareness. Your identity dissolves completely into experience. Life happens without separation. Joy, pain, sensations, they simply arise and fall away effortlessly. You don't detach, you integrate fully. The idea of you disappears, leaving only awareness, vivid and immediate. This isn't emptiness. It's profound fullness, pure existence. No separation, no division, no one observing, just boundless, timeless awareness. Life happening, effortlessly, perfectly, without a single fragment out of place. Level 93, non-dual awareness. You enter complete unity consciousness. Duality dissolves, no more good versus bad, self versus other, inner versus outer. The glitch? You once saw life as separate fragments, polarities to navigate. But now, opposites merge into a single, seamless truth. Everything simply is. No judgment, no resistance, no comparison. Life moves effortlessly, without categorization. You realize suffering arose from believing you were separate from life itself. Now, you flow with existence, not against it. You embody total acceptance, not passively, but profoundly alive. Pain and pleasure blend into pure experience. You're no longer seeking anything, because nothing feels missing. Non-duality isn't something you understand. It's something you are. Whole, undivided, infinitely at peace. Here, there's only life. Boundless, integrated, perfectly complete. And you're inseparable from it. Level 94, eternal. Now time ceases to exist as something linear, separate, or measurable. You merge completely into the present moment. Eternal, infinite, now. The glitch? You once lived your life trapped between past memories and future anxieties, never fully here. But at this level, you finally arrive. You realize clearly, the past is memory, the future imagination. The only reality is this ever-unfolding moment. Everything exists simultaneously. Life expands infinitely, moment by moment. No more rushing, no more waiting, only presence. You experience time not as fleeting, but as limitless, spacious, alive. You savor every breath, every touch, every sensation as profoundly sacred. The eternal now isn't just mindfulness, it's liberation. Because when you truly inhabit the moment, life transforms from passing time to infinite possibility. Level 95, God realization. You awaken to the deepest truth. The divine isn't outside you, it's within. The glitch? You spent lifetimes seeking God externally, in temples, teachings, others. But now you realize clearly, you're not separate from divinity. You are divinity in human form. Every breath, heartbeat, thought, and feeling becomes sacred. You recognize your true essence as infinite awareness, eternal love, pure consciousness. You no longer beg or bargain with something out there. Instead, you embody divinity directly, living as love, wisdom, compassion, not arrogance, but humble, joyful recognition. You see God everywhere because you feel God within. You stop waiting for miracles and start becoming one. Because at this level, God isn't something you find. It's something you finally remember you always were. Level 96, union. You merge fully with life, existence, everything. The glitch? You once thought union was something to achieve, a goal at the end of a spiritual journey. But now, union is recognized as your natural state, effortless, constant, inseparable. You're no longer a seeker searching for wholeness. You are wholeness itself. There's no separation between inner and outer worlds, self and source. Your identity dissolves completely into unity. Love isn't given or received. It's simply what you are. Experiences move through you without resistance or attachment. You don't become one with everything. You awaken to the truth you were never separate. Union isn't something you strive for. It's something you rest into. And resting here, you discover infinite peace, absolute harmony, and eternal oneness. Level 97, homecoming. You realize deeply you never truly left. The glitch? You spent a lifetime searching for home in relationships, accomplishments, spiritual breakthroughs. But now you remember clearly. Home was never a place or a person. It's your true essence, eternal, unchanging, peaceful. This isn't discovery. It's remembrance. The endless seeking stops. You stop chasing, stop searching, and finally rest fully in your being. The feeling is indescribable, like coming back after lifetimes away. Relief, joy, deep recognition. Every breath feels familiar. Every heartbeat feels safe. You no longer fear losing home because you are home. Infinite, unconditional, always here. At this level, you don't just arrive, you realize you've always belonged. Welcome back, your soul whispers gently. You were never lost, you simply forgot how to see. Level 98, radiant stillness. You become stillness itself, yet radiantly alive. The glitch? You once saw stillness as empty, lifeless, passive, but now you recognize it as deeply vibrant, pulsating with presence. This stillness isn't silent. It hums quietly, powerfully, beneath all experiences. You're deeply grounded, yet infinitely expansive. Actions flow effortlessly from inner peace. You become a quiet, steady beacon, calm, yet luminous. Your presence speaks louder than words ever could. You embody a paradox, still yet alive, silent yet expressive. Radiant stillness isn't something you seek, it's something you become. You realize clearly that life's greatest power doesn't come from force or effort, but from the quiet depth of your being. You no longer chase, achieve, or struggle. You simply radiate truth, effortlessly, profoundly, completely. Level 99, Sacred Glitch. You awaken fully to the paradox, perfection within imperfection, clarity within confusion, divinity within the human experience. The glitch? You once chased perfection, believing wholeness meant flawless. But now, you realize clearly, the cracks were sacred, the places the light entered. Mistakes weren't failures, they were openings. Pain wasn't punishment, it was initiation. You see the beauty in every flaw, the wisdom in every stumble. You honor your humanness fully, not as limitation, but as sacred opportunity. Your imperfections no longer shame you, they deepen you. The sacred glitch reminds you, you're here not to transcend life, but to embrace it fully. Broken, beautiful, human, divine, all at once. Life becomes a dance between light and shadow, wholeness found precisely in imperfection. Level 100, Consciousness Awakened. You awaken completely, not as a person who finally knows, but as pure consciousness itself. The glitch? You once believed awakening was about personal achievement, reaching the end. But now you clearly realize there never was an individual awakening. Only consciousness remembering itself through infinite forms. You stop identifying as someone seeking enlightenment. You embody awareness directly. Life unfolds effortlessly. You're neither separate nor attached. You become the silent observer and the vibrant participant simultaneously. Everything arises from you, yet nothing binds you. You are infinite, timeless, fully awake. Consciousness isn't something you have. It's what you are. And in this complete remembrance, freedom isn't gained. It's realized as always present. Awake, aware, infinite. You don't just witness life. You are life. Consciousness, fully realized.